everyone, and welcome back to The Split Decision. I'm Elias Blanco. Each week we'll look at the biggest headlines and fights throughout the past week in boxing. And listen, this week was stacked. We had a lot of fights and we had a lot of world champions be crowned. So without further ado, let's get to the fights. So it was a bloodbath in the PBC's first main event on Amazon Prime, but a new star was made at 154, and ironically, he wasn't even originally supposed to be in the main event. Sebastian Fundora hands Tim Tszyu his first pro loss, beating him by split decision. A massive cut early in the fight left Tszyu crippled throughout, constantly having to wipe the blood out of his eyes. But it was Fundora's reach that made the difference in this one. The towering Inferno fought behind his jab, keeping Tszyu at a distance and limiting him to 1 or 2 punch combinations. Fundora is now the unified WBC and WBO junior middleweight champion. In the co-main event, Isaac Pitbull Cruz is now a world champion, stopping Rolly Romero in the 8th round to win the WBA junior welterweight title. Pitbull hurt Rolly early in the first round, and from there he dominated the fight. Cruz stuck to his game plan of stalking and pressuring Rolly, then punishing him with hard hooks. Pitbull now joins the stacked lineup of Subriel Matias, Devin Haney, and Teofimo Lopez on the list of world champions at 140. So let's take a look at the full card from Amazon Prime. Now, again, we talked about Fundora and Tszyu and Cruz and Rolly. Those fights were fantastic, and 2 new world champions were made. But before that, the ageless wonder, Erislandy Lara, knocked out Michael Zarafa in the 2nd round. Listen, at 40 years old, that man has gotten better. That man's now starting to sit down on his punches, and he's generating so much power. I actually can't believe it. It's one of the craziest boxing transitions I've ever seen. From a technician to a power puncher, Lara is someone to look out for. Also on this card, Julio Cesar Martinez makes his 6th successful defense of his WBC flyweight title against Angelino Cordova. Martinez is a beautiful fighter, someone who just wants to fight, wants to give a brawl, entertain the fans, and he really did do that. So there's a new king at 154, and he might just be the most difficult fighter to prep for. Sebastian Fundora is now the top guy at junior middleweight, showing a new wrinkle to his game that may be impossible to beat. At 6'6" with an 80-inch reach, Fundora is a matchup nightmare for everybody. I mean, he has the height and length of a heavyweight, but somehow has the perfect body for 154. We all knew he was dangerous on the inside, naturally fighting in the phone booth and breaking guys down. But now that he's been able to fight at a distance behind that long jab, he'll be difficult to reach. And whoever faces him next, whether it's Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford, or even Tim Tszyu again, Sebastian Fundora is now the guy to beat at junior middleweight. This past Friday, Top Rank put on a stellar card headlined by former 2-division world champion Oscar Valdez taking on Australia's Liam Wilson. And this one, the former champ put on a performance to prove the doubters wrong. Valdez stopped Wilson in the 7th round, winning the interim WBO junior lightweight title. Valdez fought smart, staying behind his jab and using his footwork and movement to bait Wilson in the pocket. Wilson, on the other hand, seemed to fight a bit reckless, trying to get into a swinging exchange instead of sticking to a game plan. Valdez improves to 32-2, and depending on what Emmanuel Navarrete does in his next fight, Valdez could be upgraded to world champion. In the co-main event of that card, Sinisa Estrada becomes the first ever undisputed minimum weight champion, beating Yokasta Valle. Now, the fight was close, with both women implementing their game plan successfully. But it was Estrada's footwork and movement and lead hand that edged out the unanimous decision. Estrada now improves to 23-0, and again, she is the first ever undisputed minimum weight champion. Alright, let's look at some other fights from this past week. Like I said last week, there was a lot of fights to look forward to, so let's just get to them real quick. So this past Wednesday, Nicholas Walters, at 38 years old, is still giving us some great performances. He beat Joseph Adorno by unanimous decision, outboxing the young guy and pretty much frustrating him throughout. I think if he puts up a couple more wins, he'll be in line for a world title shot. On that top-ranked card on Friday, Raymond Murataya remains undefeated. I think he's going to be a top contender in the next few years. He's a pretty polished boxer. I like him a lot. Over in Atlanta for overtime boxing, Elijah Pierce stopped Arthur Villanueva in the 4th round. Listen, Elijah Pierce had to go through some adversity. He actually got knocked down early in the fight and then came back to get the stoppage. So good fight for Elijah Pierce and good fight for overtime boxing, because I feel like they have a new star on their hands under their banner. On Saturday, Gilberto Ramirez. Zurdo is now the first ever Mexican-born cruiserweight champion, beating Arsen Goulamirian by unanimous decision. Zurdo outboxed Goulamirian throughout. His movement and everything was just too much for the bigger, stockier guy, and now Zurdo makes history, and I think that cruiserweight division just got a little more exciting. And then on Sunday, over in Japan, Melvin Jerusalem became the WBC strawweight champion, beating Yudai Shigeoka by split decision. A very big upset, because the Shigeoka brothers were supposed to be these next gen of fighters in the strawweight division. But Melvin Jerusalem's feints, his veteran leadership, and his ring generalship pretty much put a stop to that. And then in the co-main event, at least one of the Shigeoka brothers was able to retain their belts, as Jinjiro defeated Jake Amparo, knocking him out in the 2nd round to retain his IBF strawweight title. So again, a lot of fights, a lot of action that we were able to witness this past weekend. All right, and let's take a look at the upcoming fights for this week. On Wednesday, over in Australia, Jamel Herring will take on Jackson England in a junior lightweight bout. Herring is going into enemy territory, looking to vie for one more run at a world title. We'll see if he can do that. On Saturday, 2 Matchroom boxing prospects will be in action, as Richardson Hitchens and Diego Pacheco will be back in the ring. 2 undefeated prospects, 2 guys that are in the top 10 in their divisions, back in the ring. Hopefully a win this Saturday will bring them closer to a world title shot. Also on Saturday, it is the only world title fight this weekend, as Golden Jack Kolkai takes on Bakrov Murtazalia for the vacant IBF junior middleweight title. With this fight, it ends the undisputed title reign of Jermell Charlo. Charlo's only has the Ring Magazine Lineal Championship left. Due to inactivity, he has lost every single belt. This fight should seal the deal. We're going to have 4 separate champions now at 154. And listen, not as many fights as last week, but it's a much needed breather after being overloaded with fights this past weekend. But no worry, because for boxing fans like us, we will still watch them. A first-of-its-kind boxing event is now official. It will be promotion versus promotion. Queensberry and Matchroom have agreed to a 5-on-5, putting 5 boxers under their banner against one another. Now, last week, the weight classes for the fights were confirmed. 2 were chosen by Frank Warren, 2 by Eddie Hearn, and the last one was picked by His Excellency himself, Turki Al-Sheikh. The weight classes are featherweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, and then 2 fights were picked at heavyweight. The event will happen on June 1st in Saudi Arabia, the same event as the undisputed light heavyweight fight between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. It has been nearly 25 years since we've seen an undisputed heavyweight champion, and next month, either Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk will break that drought. Now, we know the fights that will precede it, so let's take a look. Take a look at that poster right there. So here is the undercard for the Ring of Fire card in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, we know about Fury and Usyk. That is the main event. But in the co-main event, we have Jai Opetaia against Maris Briedis. That is a rematch from their fight in 2022, and is for the IBF cruiserweight title. I think that's going to be an interesting fight. That fight was close before, Opetaia won. Briedis actually broke Opetaia's jaw in that fight. I think that fight is going to be a banger. Also on that card, Joe Cordina is going to face Anthony Kagache for the IBF featherweight title. Joe Cordina, I'm a big fan of him. He's such a slick boxer, and I'm excited to see that matchup. Also on that card, Ajit Kabayel is going to take on Frank Sanchez, 2 undefeated heavyweights vying to make the next step to become a top contender. That fight is probably going to steal the show. Also on that card, Sergey Kovalev is back in action. The former world champion has been making a run since losing to Canelo Alvarez back in 2019, so he looks to get another win. And then finally, Mark Chamberlain, the British prospect, is back in action. So Ring of Fire is looking to be a banger card. I can't wait. Again, this fight card is May 18th in Saudi Arabia. Teofimo Lopez will be back in the ring this summer. It is reported that the WBO champ will defend his 140-pound title against Canada's Steve Claggett. Now, Lopez last fought on Super Bowl weekend, beating Jermaine Ortiz in a fight where many criticized the champ's performance. Claggett, on the other hand, is currently on a 9-fight win streak and is actually scheduled to fight on April 11th. This fight, however, will be June 29th in Miami, Florida. Sugar Shakir Stevenson also back in action this summer, and now we know who he will fight. A deal is being finalized for Shakir to defend his WBC lightweight title against Artem Harutyunyan. Now, Harutyunyan is coming off a close decision loss to Frank Martin last summer, and Shakir is coming off a fight where the least amount of punches were thrown. This fight is happening July 6th in Shakir's hometown of Newark, New Jersey. A huge fight in the UK is very close to being a done deal. It's reported that a fight between Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yarde is very close to being done. Buatsi is currently undefeated and is coming off his biggest win against Dan Aziz. Yarde has won 2 fights in a row since losing to Artur Beterbiev. 2 Golden Boy fighters are stepping in the ring this month. Virgil Ortiz and Jose Ramirez return on April 27th. Now, this will be Ramirez's first fight since signing with Golden Boy back in January. Ortiz will be fighting for the 2nd time this year. And the French phenom at 168 returns to the ring next month. Undefeated Christian Mbili will be back facing Mark Heffron. Mbili is currently ranked in the top 5 at super middleweight and is vying for a breakout fight. His next fight will be May 25th in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now at the championship round where we ran about the biggest topic in the past week in boxing. And this week goes to the destroyer, Mr. Conor Benn. So it may be a while until we see the destroyer fighting in the UK again. The British Boxing Board of Control has won their appeal against the decision to lift Benn's suspension to fight in the country. Now, the suspension came after Benn tested positive on 2 separate drug charges for clomiphene ahead of his big fight against Chris Eubank Jr. Since then, he has been trying to appeal the decision and fight in his home country. Now, this situation is messy, and it doesn't look like it's going to get resolved anytime soon. It was just last summer that Benn's suspension was lifted. Now, not only did the board get the appeal, but it draws out this legal battle even longer. This saga has really hurt Conor Benn's career, almost to the point of no return. Benn had everything going for him, the look, the undefeated record, and he's the son of one of the greatest British boxers of all time. Not only that, but he had the backing of Eddie Hearn, arguably the top promoter in British boxing. Conor Benn could have become the face of British boxing. Now he's having to fight in the States, where his name doesn't hold that much weight, limiting just how much money he could generate. Now, it's unclear what the next steps are, whether Benn will be reinstated or if he could have a fresh hearing. But what we know so far is that Conor Benn is not fighting in the UK anytime soon. Guys, that is all the time we have for fights today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We're going to have videos every single Monday. This past week was great, and again, I am so excited for what's coming up ahead. We have a whole bunch of fights in April, but thank you guys for watching The Sweet Science. I'm Elias Blanco, and I'm out.